You are now listening to the Just Corrections podcast with your host, William Young.
Can we just get this show on the road?
Sedgwick County Jail, Wichita, Kansas. An inmate knocked a deputy unconscious during a fight. The assault left the deputy needing serious medical attention. And if you've been in the profession for any length of time, you know that stories like this one are far too common. They're commonplace, and it's a stark reminder of what we face every single shift. Greetings, my fearless frontliners, my fellow guardians of the galleries. I'm William Young, and this is the Just Corrections podcast. If you're new here, welcome. I'm happy that you're joining us. If you're a current, aspiring, retired, or soon to be retiring correctional professional, and you're looking for correctional content that's informative, engaging, intended to educate and elevate the profession, well, you are in the right place. You're amongst friends. If you're looking for war stories or somebody who just wants to complain, who quit after a couple of weeks, well, this is not going to be that. And before I get any further, before I dive into the topic, the assault, I want to thank the members of the Just Corrections Patreon community for supporting the channel. I could not do this, create this content without you. I appreciate you. I love you. And if you're watching and you want to contribute, support the channel. I'll throw a link in the description below, or if you'd rather just buy a super thanks, you can do that by hitting the little thank you button right below me. All right, let's break this down. According to the reports, according to the article that I read on cake.com, that's not a food site, that's a news site, KAKE.com. I'll put the link in the episode description for you. It says around 11 a.m., a fight involving two inmates broke out in the housing unit, the pod of the Sedgwick County Adult Detention Facility. The altercation included the use of a quote-unquote improvised weapon, according to the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office Public Information Officer. It says here, detention deputies responded to the area and intervened to break up a fight. And during the response, a third inmate, so maybe someone who was not directly involved in the first fight, the main melee, struck a deputy in the head, a responding deputy in the head, causing that deputy to lose consciousness for a short period of time. Now, the article doesn't go into all the details, and I wish we had more, but if you've ever worked inside of the housing unit, if you're involved in corrections, you can probably, in your mind, mentally just fill in the blanks. But I want to talk about this today because this is the reality of corrections, our reality. And I know that some people try to water down the potential for this level of violence, for this type of violence, for the frequency of violence, because they're afraid that we won't be able to attract people. We won't be able to bring people in. If we let people know the dangers that we actually face, that we will continue with the problems that we have with understaffing. But I think that it's important to talk about it. So we're going to talk about it. Look, the potential to be attacked, to be assaulted, the ingredients for these sort of things to happen are always there, right? Always. Whether you're working in a dorm, a pod, intake, medical, large county jail, tiny prison, it doesn't matter. Every single day we put on the uniform, walk into our facilities, past the gates, past the door, we step into a world where violence isn't just possible, it's expected. It's part of the job. And I want to emphasize something here. What happened here to this deputy, it's not rare. This is not an anomaly. This is not an isolated incident. This type of thing, it happens all the time. It happens at big jails, small jails, prisons, every level of custody. If you're in the profession long enough, you work in corrections long enough, you are either going to be involved in an assault, you're certainly going to respond to one, or you know somebody or have witnessed something that has happened, folks. It's not if, it's when. So what can we do? And that's the real question, and that's what I want to talk about today. What can we do? How can we protect ourselves? And I'm not going to give you some training video fluff or some checklist garbage. You've already been through your defensive tactics training. You've already been through DT training, right? Hopefully you have. I hope some of you have. Some of you are just thrown right to the wolves and then go to the academy later on down the road. And so what I want to talk about right here is real practical steps, things that you already know, and hopefully you know, that you can actually use to limit, right? And that's the key, limit, not prevent, but limit the chances of this happening to you, of something similar happening to you. So first and foremost, I want to remind you, I want to hearken back to something that you've hopefully learned, that you've picked up, that was embedded into your brain during training, part of that mental morphosis you have to go through, and that's situational awareness, right? You've got to be plugged in. You have to pay attention to body language, to tension, to those little energy shifts, if you will, in the unit. Like, is it too loud? Is it too quiet? And I've worked with some officers that want their units like quiet, library-esque, but I like a little volume. I want a little noise because quiet is not good for me, right? So, or have you ever walked into a housing unit and something feels just a little bit off? So trust that. That's your gut telling you that something is about to pop off. So remember situational awareness, right? What is going on around you? What's the feel of the unit? What are your people doing? Where are you standing? Are you remembering that reactionary gap? All of those things go into keeping yourself safe. Don't get too close. Don't pin yourself in a position that you can't get out of, right? If you've got to walk down the tier, and some of the I remember touring the Wisconsin Resource Center, and one of their housing units, the officer station is set up with the desk all the way at the back. And I didn't like that. I saw that and I didn't like that right away. And I talked to the officers when I was doing the tour, and they all have the similar red flags on that, right? So if you have to fight your way out, you have to literally pass by all these cells. And so those are things that you want to look at. Like if that's the reality, that's the physical layout, this is what I have to do. How in my mind can I work through this? How in my mind, if something happens, can I get out and can I work through that? And that's part of your situational awareness. That's part of having a game plan. The other thing that you can do to limit the possibility of something happening to you is to talk to your people, is to know your people. So when something feels off, right? You walk into the unit and something feels off, what do? Well, you do what you should always be doing, which is your rounds, right? Rounds, folks, rounds aren't just about checking the boxes. They're about building rapport. They're about keeping your finger on the pulse of the unit. So you know who's hanging out with who's working out with who's playing cards with who's arguing with who's frustrated, who just got off the phone with bad news. You can see those stress fractures, right? Those things developing before they explode. Being proactive can de-escalate situations before they ever start. Like when I was in a unit, I wanted to know who had court, who had visits from who, when. For me, it was all about the information that I could collect, that I could then use to diffuse, to connect, to tell if something was off, and then try to get ahead of whatever I thought was coming. So for example, if one of your people is going to court to get sentenced, talk to them prior to that to see where their head is at. And then when they get back, make it a point to ask them how it went, offer to talk to them, or offer other services that are available to them, like mental health or the chaplains. Think about who has visits. Did inmate Smith get their visit on Thursday night? You know, they always get their visits on Thursday night. They didn't get it, and now they're pacing back and forth in the day room. Those are things that are important to know. Are the people getting their mail? Did they get a letter from home? Is that why they're agitated? All of those things are things that you need to know, that you need to talk about. Know people's routine and notice when they're off, and then you can sort of head off some of that, because some of the explosion, look, I had an individual go after me one time that wasn't upset with me, that had a situation with another officer that they didn't have the opportunity to go after. There was a situation boiling over that then boiled over to that interaction with that officer. And then when they were returned, I didn't know anything about it. The incident ensued. And then afterwards, I was able to go back and say, what the heck, man? I've known you for years. Why did you do this? And then they broke it down, right? So it's about limiting the opportunities for this to happen. And that has a lot to do with knowing your people. Again, it's not about preventing these things. We're not going to prevent everything, but it's about understanding how to reduce the opportunity for you to be a victim for these things. And here's the big thing, right? So we're going to talk to our people. We're going to exercise our situational awareness muscle, and then we're going to follow policy, right? Especially the small ones. And here's the kicker about following policy. You have to know what's in the policy. You have to actually look at it. So when it comes up and you're supposed to read it, click it, and say, yeah, I read it, you might actually want to read it. So for example, one of the policies that I feel pertain to this, and again, we don't know the whole situation, but at our facility, how I was trained is that if a fight breaks out in our unit, it's not the responsibility of the housing unit officer to intervene, right? It's not smart for one guy to break up a fight of 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, because you don't know if it's a setup. You don't know what the intention, or what if happens if you slip and you fall and you go down, and so that's not our role. Our role is to secure the unit, is to make sure that other inmates don't get involved, right? We want to lock everybody down. We protect the doors, the safety of everyone that's inside. And some of you may hear that and think that's cowardice. That's not cowardice. That's smart tactics, because some incidents may be setups, and we don't want to run in blind. So don't take that bait, right? And then let's talk about this. Let's talk about this improvised weapon. The article said improvised weapon. So what was that, right? We don't know. But it could have been a broom handle or a mop handle or something that we as officers left unsecure. So let's talk about those little things. The things that seem harmless until they're not, like brooms, mops, cleaning equipment. Folks, if they aren't locked down, they're weapons. It's that simple. When I do a talk, I hold up a pen. When I talk about the programming, the mental morphosis that we have to undergo, the way that we are taught, we change our perception on certain things. I hold this up and I say, officers, and if you're listening, I'm holding up a pen. I hold up a pen and I say, what is this? And the officers almost in unison say a weapon, a shank, a shiv, whatever it is. And then I say, my follow-up question is, what else can be a weapon? And the answer is everything. Spray bottles, broom handles, everything that isn't screwed down, bolted down to the floor can be a weapon. All right. It's that simple. And if you don't lock up your cleaning cart, if you don't secure your pins, your water bottles, whatever, if you're not doing those things, if you're cutting corners and ignoring policy because it's inconvenient, because it takes you a little extra time, because nothing's never happened before, then you're setting yourself up. You're stacking the deck against yourself. And I want to move into something now that's probably going to ruffle some feathers. It's going to be a little bit difficult for some of us to entertain, but it's the truth, right? It's how do we contribute? What are our own contributions to an assault, to the opportunity for an assault to take place? Because sometimes we create the conditions for these assault to happen. And I'm not saying it's our fault. Right? The blame always lies with the aggressor, with the individual, with the person who carries out the assault, period, right? Point blank. I'm not blaming anybody. But our tone, our attitude, our complacency, and our corner cutting could all play a part, right? A lot of our clientele is opportunistic. They're looking for those moments. They're looking for soft targets, so don't be that. And here's the other thing. How are you speaking to your people? If you're rude, if you're consistently yelling, disrespecting, barking orders, humiliating inmates in front of their peers, putting them on Front Street, if you're acting like you're untouchable, then you are intentionally, maybe, or unintentionally creating tension, right? And that doesn't excuse the violence, but it turns up the temperature in your unit. It adds fuel to the fire that's already smoldering, right? Our facilities, our day rooms, our dorms are already pressure cookers. They're volcanoes waiting to erupt. All they need is that spark, right? And what I'm saying is that sometime the way that you carry yourself, the way that you conversate with other people could be that spark, right? And here's the other thing, and I love this. If you're getting too comfortable, if you're walking the same pattern, the same direction every round, if you're planted on the podium, if your face is in a book or a computer because you're chatting it up with the new nurse that just started, maybe you're ignoring the signs of the tension because this isn't typically your unit, or you're just filling in, or you're just on overtime, or it's your Friday and you don't care, you're setting yourself up to be blindsided, right? If you're issuing trays and you're opening all of the hatches at the same time, even though policy states otherwise, you're setting yourself up for failure. And not only yourself, but for the officers that are going to come running, responding to the emergency that you helped create, which also puts them at risk. Look, I'm not blaming. None of this is about blaming the victim. Okay. I want to be crystal clear on that. But if we're honest, if we're going to be honest with ourselves, and that's what this is all about, right? Educating, elevating. And sometimes you have to look at yourself. So let's be really honest. Do we feel like there are things that we do, habits that we fall into that increase our risk of being assaulted? Folks, this is about control. And you can't control everything in this job, but you can control how you show up, how you carry yourself, and how prepared you are to perform the duties that you are expected to do. So here's the bottom line. What happened in Kansas at Sedgwick County could happen anywhere. It does happen anywhere to any one of us. And while we can't completely eliminate the risk, right, we can stack the odds in our favor by staying situationally aware, by being proactive and making our rounds and talking to people, by locking down the small stuff, putting away the brooms, the supplies, shutting the doors, right? Making sure things are accounted for, and follow the policy, follow the procedure. even if you feel that they're a hindrance. Remember where you work. Safety is not convenient and it's not comfortable, but every decision that you make inside has life or death implications. And that's how I want you to think about it. Even if that broom isn't locked up in the closet like it's supposed to be, even if that closet isn't locked and it's supposed to be locked, folks, the decisions that we make on a daily basis have life or death implications. And then check yourself. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. Check your tone, check your attitude, and check your level of engagement. Are you too comfortable? Are you too complacent? Because at the end of the day, folks, our goal is to get you home safe and sound to your friends, to your family, in the same way that you came in, with the same amount of holes that you came in with, right? Not just physically safe, but emotionally safe as well. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out with us today. That's a lot to chew on. I'm going to let you chew on this. Drop your feedback in the comments below. Thank you for listening, for watching this episode. New episodes are available every day, 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. Set your reminder. Click that calendar invite that I put in the description so you never miss an episode. Make sure you subscribe to the show. Get involved in the show, leave a comment, engage, share the show with your friends, your family, fellow correctional professionals, everybody. Follow the show, Facebook. I'm on Facebook, X, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, the Just Corrections podcast. And if you're interested in supporting the show, please consider becoming a member of the Just Corrections Patreon community. There are a couple of different tiers, different options, so check that out. I'll also have a link to that in the description below. And don't forget to check out the books, Trained to Change: The Unfortunate and Unintentional Consequences of the Correctional Curriculum, The Nothing That Never Happened, and When Home Becomes a Housing Unit. All of those are in the descriptions below. And if you'd like to bring me out to speak or present at your event, send me an email at justcorrections.booking@gmail.com. All right, guys, that's all I got. Until next time, be smart, stay safe, stay sane, and remember that you, folks, although you don't have control over everything around you, you do have the control to keep yourself as safe as possible. You have the ability to make decisions to keep yourself as safe as possible. It's not about removing 100% the possibility of these things happening, because they're going to happen, right? But it's about keeping yourself as safe as possible. So that's all I got. I rambled. I screwed up my tagline. Don't worry about it. We'll talk, folks. We'll talk soon.